I hope you've had a great start to 2025 and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to unveil an image of a stellar nursery in the constellation of Auriga, 12,400 light years away from Earth, made by 27 hours worth of data collected using the small refractor in my home observatory. My name is Morten and you are watching Frost Astrophotography. Today it's fairly warm here in Hafsta outside Örnsköldsvik in the northern part of Sweden, only 8 degrees minus Celsius. But we are expecting 30 centimeters of snow in the following days, so we are prepared to do some shoveling. IC 410, or the Tadpole Nebula, is an emission nebula in the constellation of Auriga. The nebula has gotten its name from the tadpole-shaped dark dust clouds that appear to be swimming towards the center. The tadpoles are in fact gas globules, about 10 light years across, and they are sites for ongoing star formations. The nebula in its entirety is more than 100 light years across and is part of a bigger star forming area, including the flaming star nebula. In a few million years, all of the gas and dust will have dissipated, and all that will be left visible is the young new stars. Here we have the 3 master files that has been stacked and drizzled: my H-alpha, my oxygen 3 and my sulfur 2. The data for this image consists of 117 hydrogen alpha light frames, 103 oxygen 3 light frames, and 103 sulfur 2 light frames, and that brings a total of 323 light frames with a total integration time of 27 hours. This is a bit more than I usually collect on my objects, but this season I have been blessed with clear skies, or maybe not that clear, but more clear skies than I've had previous seasons, and that is why I spend some more time on each object. This data was actually captured during 10 different nights, starting with October the 27th of 2024, ending with December 30th on 2024, just one day before the New Year's Eve. Now, these stacked and drizzled master light frames hasn't been processed anything yet, and you can look at the sulfur 2 here. There's a fair amount of data. You can see the tadpoles in the master light frame here. And in the O3, you can also see some parts of the tadpoles. And in the hydrogen alpha, of course, you can see the tadpoles as well. One thing you can also see in the hydrogen alpha here is that you have a lot of dust and gas on the outer edges of the master light frame here. And it will be interesting to see here what my final picture will look like, because some of the Tadpole Nebula images that I've seen online are very focused on the main object in the middle here, but I think that this picture will also include nebulosity in the entire image. There's not much background here at all. In the linear phase of my image processing, there are no news actually. I'm going to do some halo processing, but I will show you later why that is not really necessary for this image. So, as usual, I do a dynamic crop and crop a little bit out of that image so that we remove some stacking artifacts if there are some. In this case, I've captured all of the light frames fairly close together, so no really big changes in rotation, since my camera right now is in a fixed position in my observatory. Next step here is to do a dynamic background extraction, and for this image there is not really that much background, just nebulosity everywhere. I just selected a few points in the image here, and then I ran through the DBE process. I did a linear fit on this image, and I chose my H-alpha as reference that I normally do. So that means that the H-alpha here has not really been modified in any way, just the sulfur 2 and oxygen 3. Then I ran through blur exterminator. I always do that. You can see here the very big difference between the left and right here, blur exterminator and no blur exterminator. That is a very useful tool, I would say. I did some minor halo adjustments here just to reduce this halo slightly, but there's not much halo in the H-alpha here, a little bit more in the other filter master light frames, but those can also be handled later on after making this image starless and stretching the starless and stars separately, so no much work here. I ran through noise exterminator after the halo processing to remove a little bit of the noise here in the nebulosity that you can see, and then I ran through the star exterminator, making a starless version of the H-alpha here, and you can see that we have a lot of interesting details in this image, even though this is just screen transfer function stretched. So you can see that you have basically data everywhere. There's no background here. There's only nebulosity, gas and dust everywhere. And those very nice tadpoles in the middle there. Some very nice detail or potential for details in this image, I would say. So that's very nice. We can compare to the first image here then with just the dynamic crop and the last image that has been processed in the linear phase, and we can also compare the first image to the last in the starless version of the linear phase here. And you can see that there is a lot being done in the linear phase, even though it's mostly just running through the processes with the settings you have on default, I would say. But it makes a lot of difference moving on to the non-linear phase later on. Before moving on to the non-linear phase here, I thought I'd share with you also the starless versions of the sulfur 2 and the oxygen 3. You can see here that the sulfur 2 data is also very nice. Not as good as the hydrogen alpha, of course. There might be also some issues with my filters here, but overall I would say it is nice data here. Of course, the worst is always oxygen 3. For me it is like that, for others might not be, but here you also see the remnants from the bright stars in the image here and the halos that they have created. And one tip that I can give you here is that when you have made the image starless, you can also handle the halos here, because when you stretch the stars manually, like I will show you later on, then you can remove all remnants of the stars and halos in the starless versions after or before stretching, whatever you prefer, and those will not be visible at all in the final image. Before we move on to stretching the starless images here, I thought I'd quickly share with you again how to stretch the stars and combine them into an SHO image, and then later on making synthetic RGB stars. So for this you can use generalized hyperbolic stretch, and you don't need to set a symmetry point when stretching stars. But one important thing is that you should select the light frame with the brightest stars. I tend to use the sulfur 2. In my case, those are brightest, or you can see the most stars. It could be oxygen 3 for you, or if you are imaging with any other filters. Select the image that you want to work with, and then you increase the local intensity to the maximum setting of 15 here. You open up a preview window, then you simply increase the stretch factor here until you get the stars that you want. You can see that you don't want to overstretch the stars. I usually tend to let the main focus of the image be the nebulosity, so I'm keeping this to a minimum. If you want to, you can make a little preview of the brightest star in the image. You can stretch it until you can see you're starting to have artifacts around the star. You can always decrease intensity later, so I would say stretch it to as much as you can here without destroying the image completely. When you're happy with that, go back to the preview, make sure you were happy with the results here, close the preview, and then you can use this setting with the triangle, drag it over to the filters one by one, applying the exact same stretch to all of the 3 filters like that. Now you have stretched the stars for all 3 filters here. Then you will combine them with a pixel math formula here. I just have to make sure that they are named correctly here in order for this formula to work. And then I can execute this. And then I have my SHO stars. You can see that there are some colors here. I will then run this image through the script Astrometry and Image Solver. And when that's completed, I will run through the spectrophotometric color calibration on this image, and that will calibrate the stars in this image as close to RGB colors as possible. You can save this, and we will use it later when we are integrating the stars here together with our starless images. For the stretching of this, I opted to use the SETI Astro statistical stretch that I use in my big processing guide. I will leave a link to that in this video description, so you can watch that in detail. After that, I also opted to use the IHDR script in order to make the final stretches and to increase contrast as much as possible, so that I would be able to bring out the details in this image. You can see here that I have a lot of detail in my H-alpha here, and there might be very close to being overexposed hairs on the tadpoles, but that might be a bit hard to avoid in this image. But it is the way it is right now. Let's see how that will end up in the final image. For the S2, the signal is not as strong. We have some noise, but I'm fairly happy with the stretch. And for the O3, I went with a little bit of a different stretch here, so that I would be able to hide all of the halos that were visible in this image, because there weren't really any O3 data out here, just concentrated to the middle of the image. And I've actually used clone stamp out here to remove the halos. I integrated the 3 starless light frames into an SHO. You can see that we have a lot of green here in this image. I then ran through the SCNR as I normally do. This will remove a lot of the green in the image, and you can also invert the image to remove some magenta that might be present in the image. It's not very vibrant. The orange is not very present here, so I started with making some color masks for cyan and yellow that I applied to this image to adjust the blue area and also to adjust the red, orange, yellow areas, bringing out those colors a little bit here in this image. After the adjustments of the colors, I ran through some sharpening here of the image. Let's see if we can see some result of the sharpening here. Unsharpened version to the left and a sharpened version to the right here. I don't like to over sharpen things, so that's why it's a bit subtle, but you can see that it is there. The same thing with noise reduction, ran through, especially on the areas here in the nebulosity that is visible. I added a synthetic luminance to this image that I made from the hydrogen alpha, and that is to increase the contrast and add some extra sharpness to this image. And you can see the results of that in this image to the right in compared to the left. I've added a lot of details here. Some might argue that maybe too much, but I tried to be very restrictive with this because it is very easy to go overboard and get too much. I've added some dark structure enhancement with the script called the same name, just to increase the dark areas in the image here, and then I made some final color corrections to the image. I think I increased the saturation of the blue and red-orange one more time, just to make it stand out. And then you have the final version to the right here compared to the first version to the left here, which is the initial integration of the SHO. Time to join the starless and stars together. And to the right here you have the synthetic RGB stars that I have run through the image solver and the color calibration, making it as close to real colors as possible. And we have the final processed starless version to the left here. And simply joined together with the pixel math formula, you get the final version of my IC410, the Tadpole Nebula, SHO with synthetic RGB stars, total integration time of 27 hours. Sit back and enjoy the results of this processing and this image, and I will return shortly with a new video and a new image for you to enjoy. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, please give it a thumbs up if you like it, and consider subscribing if you're not already doing so. If you want to support the work with these videos, there is an option listed in the video description that you can use. And remember, if you want to know everything about step-by-step SHO processing in PixInsight, I have included a link to my latest complete guide on that subject. Until the next video, I wish you have clear skies.